I started riding, really riding bikes and racing when I was in grad school. So it wasn't until I moved to Boston that I started riding, kind of initially as a way to get out of the city, explore a little bit more. Turns out the MIT cycling team is really good.
Mhm.
So it was very easy to get swept along in their excitement. And, everyone can think back about that one formative moment that they had riding with a team that sucked them into the community. And now we're all stuck.
Mhm.
And so for me, that happened in Boston.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpri. If you're active at all, whether you're running or simply out walking for the day, you've probably experienced one of the number one problems that active people have, and that's chafing. Solpri's all new, all natural anti-chafe balm solves that problem while feeding your skin the vital nutrients it needs to be healthy. If you'd like to stop chafing once and for all and treat your body right, go to solpri.com to check out the anti-chafe balm today. That's SOLPRI.com. Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. My guest today has her PhD from MIT in biological engineering. She's a pro gravel rider for Lauf. She rides with the U.S. national track team and is a self-described coffee snob and deprived of coffee, apparently, today. Welcome to the show, Christina Birch.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, Christina. First things first. So, if you're listening on iTunes or just audio and you're missing out on the video, Christina's got like kind of picturesque scene in the background going on. So, where are you? Why does it look so beautiful behind you?
Yeah, I am socially distancing really hard right now. I am at my family's cattle ranch in central Montana. So
Okay.
if you looked at a map of Montana and put your finger on the exact center, you would land on us actually. Um, and so we have a family ranch that's shared between all my aunts and my dad. That's about 10,000 acres. So I am just on the
Okay.
edge of that right now.
So, did you grow up like working, like like working the cattle and doing all that?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, I grew up really, went to school in Arizona, but I'd spend summers up here working, getting as much of an experience out here as I can. But that's part of why I'm up here is to work on the ranch and help out.
Okay. Okay. I was like, if you had, I was gonna be, after we got done, I'd be like, you're gonna have to call my dad. My dad grew up as an only child on a farm, so like he loves to talk, cattle and like all that kind of. It's his jam. I don't know anything about it because I grew up in the suburbs, so there's like this part of, kind of his life that I really can't connect to, but it was, his whole world growing up. So he loves watching people. There's like farmers our age on YouTube now, and he's obsessed with watching those people on YouTube. So I was just curious if you had kind of had that experience growing up.
Well, we can do an addendum. We're branding tomorrow the last batch of calves, so I
Okay.
can FaceTime you in.
We could add that on the back. Um, so you've got a lot going on. It seems a little succinct from the intro, but it's kind of hard to figure out where to start. So you came at cycling to cycling kind of, I'll say, late in life, quote unquote.
Sure.
You weren't doing it from the age of 5 upwards, right?
Correct. Yeah. I started riding, really riding bikes and racing when I was in grad school. So it wasn't until I moved to Boston that I started riding, kind of initially as a way to get out of the city, explore a little bit more. Turns out the MIT cycling team is really good.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very easy to get swept along in their excitement. And, everyone can think back about that one formative moment that they had riding with a team that sucked them into the community. And now we're all stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that happened in Boston. And, the New England has just got a fantastic cyclocross scene. And so I really fell in love with cross. It was, the first discipline I really focused on. And I rode for the Jam Fund up there with Jeremy Powers and Alec Donahue for a couple years. Um, and I absolutely loved it.
Is the MIT team? Is it? is it split into all the different disciplines? So you have like a road group and you get the cyclocross group, or how does that set up?
Well, I'm not sure how much overlap there is between the disciplines now, since I've been out of there for 5 years. Just hit my PhD defense 5 year anniversary.
Okay.
Um, but when I was a student there, it was definitely sort of parted along disciplines. Road obviously being the most popular
Hmm.
and well populated, and part of that was because the Eastern Collegiate Cycling Conference, the ECCC, is fantastically run. It's probably one of the one of the best cycling organizations I've ever been a part of, and under the leadership of like Joe Capino was running it back then, and he coordinated amongst all these different New England colleges, and we'd have a race every single weekend,
Hmm.
Saturday, Sunday. And so you get to see people from, not just across the river at like BU, but we would go to State College, to ride against a whole bunch of teams. We'd race against Vermont, there, all sorts of stuff. And I think that just having that structure made road really big.
Hmm.
And then for cyclocross, we kind of tapped into all of the local UCI cross races that were there, and collegiate riders just ended up getting scored separately. But so you got introduced to some real like world class level racing early on, and there was actually there still is a track in Londonderry, New Hampshire.
Hmm.
It's an old go-kart track, but when I was there, the program was run by Kurt Begeman, um, and he ran a fantastic program, like really, really a tight ship. So even though it was like kind of a questionable facility, kind of bumpy,
Hmm.
nothing, that would really stand out. I could go from there and then go race on a 250 and feel comfortable that I was gonna follow all the rules, do all the right things, and not hurt anybody at least.
Yeah, I feel like you're not taking this weird leap from where you are to actually being out there and competing.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of people in New England that are super passionate about cycling, and they're all close together geographically. And I think I really benefited from that, especially like you said, coming in late to the sport.
Hmm.
Um, like in my 20s.
Hmm.
Um, it really helped jumpstart, I think, my cycling career.
That's like the community aspect, and I think you mentioned it's kind of the ability of the race director to put things together. Like it's always, I don't want to say surprising to me, but it's so crucial, but it's almost this like hidden element. I'm out of the collegiate scene. I don't race professionally, but even just community races, how the race director puts together the race, who they communicate with, how they coordinate everything, like affects the quality of the race and how much fun you have. Like you're out there to compete, obviously, but I actually won't name this particular race, but it was in my 20 years of racing, 10 years, 10 plus years of triathlon. I did this race. It was so poorly run. I will never go back to that race. And I speak negatively of it. I won't here, but just in person because the race the race director basically changes almost every year. So there's no
Yeah.
consistency. So it's awesome that you had that person in charge to take care of that aspect. That's like as racers we kind of almost forget about it. We're just there to go kick
Yeah.
butt, like do our thing.
Well, I think part of it is like the experience of racing is really personal, right? It's,
Hmm.
we're rather vulnerable out there. We're putting ourselves out there. We're going as hard as we can, on, trying to win. Really, you really put yourself out there, right? And so I feel like any sort of impact that you get, any impression from other racers yelling at you, the race director, how everything is run, if it's adding to your stress, like it becomes a very personal thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's why like we all get so worked up about races that have been really tough, or like this one guy that yelled at me to, like I was wearing my saddlebag wrong, or whatever. Like it's, I think it's yeah, it's a little tough to um, not feel like everything is really personal.
Hmm.
I certainly, it's yeah.
Have you developed a routine where you can kind of like start ignoring people? I know that's something like I know something that develops over time, but coming late to the sport, like was that have you done it and was it more conscious or like put
Like
together kind
a
of a mental warm up routine to kind of block everything out?
mm,
Like Michael Phelps famously listens to certain kind of music before he goes swims. Like everybody has their own thing, their own kind of routine. I didn't know if you've developed one. But it seems really common from people that start at a young age and kind of go on to perform at the level that you're able to. So I just didn't know if you had a similar experience.
yeah, I think it's that's been actually a little bit of a shift for me lately since I've reached like the World Cup level.
Hmm.
I think earlier on, coming late into the sport, having zero experience cycling prior, I think I always had a little bit of an underdog mentality, and I'm very comfortable with that. I'm very very comfortable in a situation where I'm underestimated and in over my head, and
Hmm.
I usually overperform, like in those situations.
Hmm.
And then then you switch gears to being on the national team,
Hmm.
um, at on the fastest nation in the world right now,
Hmm.
and you're expected to medal. And so now you kind of have, it's a huge mental shift, I think, to say, well, I'm no longer the underdog. I'm no longer trying to prove myself. I'm out here for blood. I'm out here, to win, to be aggressive, to beat people and to beat them badly.
Hmm.
And it's obviously a very different experience if I'm talking about myself racing individually versus racing with a team.
Hmm.
Um, but I think I'm probably much more relaxed now at these races. If we go to a World Cup or Pan Am Champs or something like that with a team, I trust so much in my preparation that
Hmm.
it's almost like it's like finally everything we've been working for is here now, and now I just get to enjoy the process,
Hmm.
um, and enjoy the racing, and of course that don't go any less hard if you're enjoying everything. There's still like the adrenaline rush, there's still the pain, the bite. Um, but I think that was a huge shift. I think I used to be very high stress early on and not wanting any sort of outside impact to threaten to deviate me from my race line. And now it's sort of like, I've had some of my best results when we didn't have bikes for warm up until about 8 minutes before we had to go to
Hmm.
the start line. And you're just like, all right, this is my new reality. What do I do with this?
Yeah. Yeah. I found as I progressed like into college, I have a lot of expectations for myself, but I found consistently my best days were like I had a game plan and then I said, Coach, I'm just gonna go have fun. Like that's my goal today. If I have fun, then I succeeded. And those are always like I would always come up with big PRs on those days because you just find something in yourself where you're not worried about it anymore. You know, but that and maybe you got an answer to this because I don't know that I yet have an answer to this. I find the trick is even if you know that, even if you know, okay, my goal is to have fun and that's how I perform the best, then you're like working this almost catch 22 where you're like, but now I want to do my best. So I'm focusing on making sure I have fun. And then you're like back to high stress.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a balance, and the immediate environment of the race and the context and everything going into it, I think really dictates. Um, so I know, thinking back to like my collegiate days when I was racing cyclocross, the year I won collegiate nationals, I went in just being like, look, I've done the best I can. I have my best UCI results of the year. I feel like, I really proved to myself that I've made huge improvements, and I deserve to be at the front of this UCI pack. And whatever happened at nationals happened, and it was very liberating. And so I had a lot more mental energy, I think, to focus on the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and then in that, I think it's not that I'm trying to focus on having fun. It's more my mind is quiet enough to allow the fun in.
Okay.
It's not just like this wound spring churning.
Yeah. It's the I don't know if this is a Midwestern phrase, but um, especially when it came to conference or championships, whatever it would be. And I've had a number of coaches over the years. They all of them seem to say, "Hay's in the barn. Hay's in the
Hay's in
barn."
the barn, money's in the bank,
Yeah.
all that. Yeah. Yep.
It's just like you done
Done
the
the work.
work. Don't worry about it anymore. You know.
Which is so easier said than done. Oh my God. Like, I mean, I unfortunately, I think I'm like a naturally very anxious person.
Hmm.
I think because I'm very type A, I like to control a lot of like control as many variables as possible. I like to think through things in great detail, in part because I get some pleasure about thinking about plans and things like that.
Hmm.
But you're right, sort of ironically, I've had my best results when it's almost like someone cuts me, cuts loose the leash
Hmm.
and I can just go for it, and it's like, well, all those things I was worried about are no longer applicable. Clean slate. And there's got to be some psychology there about, you know, just some event that really like pulls you truly into the present moment.
Hmm.
I think that I think for a race mentality is incredibly powerful.
I spent a lot of time kind of reading books on, you know, the winning mindset and like race performance, like all about kind of getting your brain in the right space. And a lot of it seemed to come back to this kind of idea of beginner's mind, like not getting so ahead of yourself that you think, I'm awesome, or I don't know that, or I do know that. It's like in this place where you you're not like a beginner often that's interested in something just does it. They don't worry about, am I doing it right? Is my form perfect? Like in your case, is my cadence right? Am I in the right gears? Is my line perfect? I should have taken it better. Like you're not worried about all those things. It's like it's just right now. This is what I'm doing, and you make adjustments on the fly because no matter what race plan you come together with. And I've executed over the years, I've executed race plans where it's like 90% there, like 90% exactly what I thought, and then there's always something, if not a lot, that goes wrong that
Yeah.
you've got to adjust.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this with my family, and they know that for me, just getting to the start line is the hardest part. As
Hmm.
soon as the race starts, it's easy, right? But just getting to the start line is the challenge. And so I have like these. I travel with a notebook that I use for bike measurement notes, passwords, race journals, whatever. And it
Hmm.
probably has for every single race the same exact like to-do list or packing list that I run through. And it's like, well, I'm going to pack the same 30 things every time.
Hmm.
And somehow instead of just looking at an old list or trusting my memory, because I've done this so much, I like to remake that list.
Hmm.
And so part of that is actually the process of making the list has now become part of my process of
Hmm.
race preparation. It's like, okay, well, I've gone through the checklist explicitly.
Hmm.
Um, okay, maybe I wasted 10 minutes, but it was 10 minutes that my brain was occupied on a very specific task.
Hmm.
And that helped. That was like one of the things that seems to help. That, and I
Well,
think just like, I think for me, a lot of my training now is more difficult and more stressful than the race itself. And like you said, the same thing, hay in the barn, I'm worried, are we going to get enough water? Is there going to be enough growth? Like, is the hay still wet? Can I bale it? Like, is it ready?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and you're stressing over that checklist maybe does a couple things. I mean, first just kind of calms you down that hey, I've got everything. I've gone over this and gone over this. But like I've got checklists for races um, because it's particularly because of the bike. Triathlons just have the most nonsense that you've got to bring with you. Especially when you're getting on a plane, you got to break the whole bike down, put it in I use a rooster case, so it breaks it into two cases. So you're essentially breaking it down into almost its basic components, and you got to put it back together again. So you got all these pieces, you got, three pairs of shoes, wetsuit and goggles, just all these things. So I've
Yeah.
made a checklist that I can just print out.
Yeah.
The problem being that checklist will vary depending on whether it's a local race, whether it's far away, if I'm staying more days than average, if there's a new nutrition piece of it. So even having that thing that you could print out is not necessarily helpful. Sometimes it's harmful. So
Yeah.
your method
Because
is
you
probably good.
or redundant, but
Well,
it's funny you bring up the travel component because I feel like that's actually something that I used to be pretty terrible at
mhm,
and found travel really stressful. And so I would often get sick after traveling.
mhm,
So I've been sick for some key races, unfortunately. Still can compete, but you still like, you're obviously not at your top.
yeah, yeah,
And I think just reducing the stress of travel. So it's like, I don't, I don't even know how many times I've unpacked and packed my bike. Everything has a spot. Like I know and now, on the World Cup circuit, like you become friends with other teams and people that are local. And so if if you miss something, I know exactly who to talk to. If I'm in Poland or if I'm in New Zealand,
hmm
I've got friends that live down the street. It's that's been a really cool part of this whole experience. But I think it's been a little bit helpful to adapt that whatever happens, like I'm gonna sort it out and just being very, very zen and specifically focusing on travel and reducing stress during travel has helped a lot.